Hello. My name is Melissa, and this is my first video. I am going to be going over the life recovery workbook, and the Bible goes with it. It can be recovery for anything. It's a biblical guide through the 12 steps. I am a recovering alcoholic and a drug addict, and I still am recovering from all kinds of things also in life. I recover from anger, you know, idolatry, that's a big one. There's just multiple things that I deal with, and I'm sure most people do as well. Um, all right, so the very beginning, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The first one, we're going to go through each step. I'm only going to do one step per video though. All right, so step one of Alcoholics Anonymous says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. And then the 12 steps of this in this book says, we admitted we were powerless over our problems, that our lives have become unmanageable. And that makes a lot of sense to me. So, introduction. He has shown you, O mortal, that what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Micah 6:8. All right, so let me see. So this book also goes on to talk about leading a group. In a context of a group, two more people can form a powerful bond as they study and work these steps together. Instantly, your struggles, problems, and hangups become a blessing to the group. As you open up, everything else will feel more free to share from their own lives. Being the leader of a group is actually quite simple. You can find many books on how to lead a small group, but here's a simple, effective way to do it. Find a location in your home, church, workplace, school, computer. Put up a few flyers announcing the time and place, calling it Support Group Recovery 12-Step Group. Show up early. I just kind of randomly put this on here. Start when you say you're going to start. Ask if anyone would like to share. Be sure that everyone knows where to get the workbook. And so, yeah, the recovery that, you can get this on Amazon. You can get this. That's where I got it, was on Amazon. And it's under self-help. It is everywhere. I mean, it's at Walmart. You can order it online. You can even get them used some places. I will put the email in the chat. You can email the person, because the guy who wrote this wants to know, like, feedback. He wants to know how people are doing, when they start doing the program. So, that's really cool that he wants to know how people are doing after they start doing this. Okay, so we're going to go with the first step. All right, so step one, we admitted we were powerless over our problems, that our lives have become unmanageable. The recovery journey begins when we confront the very first word in step one, which is we. This immediately challenges the loner, isolationist in us when we are in our addictions and dependent on people and substances. Although we would be more comfortable with the word I, and would prefer to get better alone, only we can recover. The 12-step program guides us into community where we're all involved. I'm sorry, I can't read today. Where all involved are a part of each other's recovery. The 12 steps are worked and lived in a group. Independence is deadly for an addict. Actually, spiritual transformation for anyone begins in community. When Jesus began his ministry, he created a group. When we look at the church in the book of Acts, we find groups meeting in homes, Living in open and honest community appears to be necessary for spiritual growth and whatever addiction or codependency issues we have. We admitted we were powerless. Admitting that something or someone has beaten us and is more powerful than our own will confronts our pride. So we keep on acting out in our dependency addiction, trying to prove that we can control it. By attending meetings and listening to other people's stories, we become more open to the possibility of recovery. Our pride must be shattered a little at a time because we will not recover without an admission of powerlessness. So, like when you say, my name's Melissa and I'm an alcoholic, um, I'm an addict. That's identifying. That's the number one thing is admitting I I have a problem, and because of that problem, my life is unmanageable. I cannot manage it with this in my life. So, our human nature rebels at the idea of powerlessness, which signifies our inability to escape our life of dependency, addiction on our own strength. We must let go of image seeking and pride and tell the truth about our demoralized condition. Step one contains a potent paradox by telling the truth about our complete powerlessness over addiction. We receive the power of choice in return. To jump into recovery waters with both feet, we must go even deeper. Not only must we admit and accept our powerlessness over our dependencies and addiction, but we must also concede that our lives are unmanageable. This strikes a second blow to our pride and our self sufficiency. When under the influence of addictive thinking, a person believes, I can handle anything, I can fix this by myself, without anyone else having to be involved. We have wanted others to believe that we have it all together and are self contained. We continue in the delusion, we continue in the delusion that we should be something we can do on our own, especially to clean up our own lives. However, addiction leads to inefficiency in our jobs, dissatisfaction in our relationships, and quite often to a sense that life is not worth living. Our emotional pain underscores the reality of our inability to manage our lives. Our loner, pull myself up by the bootstraps mentality must give way to joining the we of recovery. We have to be rid of the just Jesus in me belief system that leads to more isolation and shame when we realize that even God is in community, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We became aware that the fact that human beings were created to be connected to others. The rebel within us must get off the throne long enough to accept the need for help from both God and others. Then we will find that God is willing to meet us in our unmanageable lives. The meditations for step one include some examples from scripture of people struggling with powerlessness. Naman, I'm really not good at saying the names, so just kind of work with me on that. Naaman, Naaman, had position and power in the military that blinded him to his powerlessness. See Kings 2 Kings 5, 1 through 15. And I probably should have had this together, but I did not. So this is the Bible that comes with it. And I got all the little tabs and stuff. So it's so much easier to find. Oh, 2, 1 through 15. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it says, chapter 5, 1, verse 1 through 15. The king of Aram, Aram, had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. Both though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. At this time, Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day the girl said to his mistress, I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. Go and visit the prophet, the king of Aram had told him. I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. So Naaman started out carrying as gifts 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel, with this letter I present my servant, Naaman, I want you to heal him of his leprosy. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, Am I God that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me. But when Elijah, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him. Why are you so upset? Said, Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel. So Naaman with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elijah's house. But Elijah sent a message out to him with the message, Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored and you will be healed of your leprosy. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me, he said. Expected, your expectations. That's where a lot of us get um, messed up in life, is that we expect things to happen, and we expect it's just we expect. That's the first part of the problem, is we expect. Okay. um, all right, so aren't the rivers of Damascus and Abana and remember, I can't really read this stuff very well, um, far or whatever, better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he simply says, Go and wash and be cured. So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times, and as the man of God had instructed him, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. So, it's following instructions, right? So he began to demand things from life, thinking that he was special because of his position. He may do as he may we may do this as well, both at work and at home. We may have an inflated sense of importance because of our ministry. We may demand things from our families or coworkers based on our way. Like Naaman, we will find that this type of pride that resists input and direction from others leads to isolation, because nobody wants to be around anybody who doesn't take constructive criticism, or lets their ego get in the way of everything. Prideful people are not good friends. I was pretty bad for a while, and I had to be broken of that. um, Only God can deal with this rebellion in our hearts. The consequences of addiction are sometimes the way by which God can break through to us. Sometimes we arrive at powerlessness and unmanageability by losing everything, as Job did. Being in recovery and trying to walk a spiritual path does not mean that we will be spared our share of snags and obstacles. That is so true. In these times, recovery can appear to be hopeless and not worth the work. The rebel in us that wants control will counsel, "This is just too hard. Your troubles must mean that God doesn't like you." At this point, we need a group of people to continue pointing us to God no matter what happens. And what we say in AA is, "We will love you until you learn to love yourself." And that's also what God does. He's just not, we don't, he doesn't have physical arms to put around us, you know what I mean? But people in AA, that's what we can do. Okay. All right. So we need people who will nurture hope even in the most difficult places. As we hit bottom and face our hopelessness and powerlessness of all life, we need encouragers. We need to be reminded of Jesus saying that if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. By exploring our powerlessness, we will have to confront and oppose negative ideas that tell us that being powerless means being a victim. By coming to the end of our own power, we develop enough humility to hear the voice of God and to do his will. The Apostle Paul, before his conversion and transformation when he was still known as Saul, could not explore powerlessness at all. He was intoxicated by the power he could wield, even if he placed him in opposition to God's plan for his life. Yet God pursued Saul, despite his power hungry, murderous state of mind, to call him to new direction and totally transform purpose, so that he could stop persecuting the gospel and start preaching it. God made him totally blind and dependent on others to lead, feed, and shelter him. He had to accept powerlessness and unmanageability in order to be used by God and power in amazing ways. So, like, if you guys don't know the story behind Paul, who used to be Saul, is he used to go and kill Christians. And, in the Bible, he, God was like, he knocks him off of his horse and he was like, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Why do you not believe in me? Why do you kill people who believe in me?" And he was blind from that day. And I believe he was blind for 3 days, actually. It's weird how that's just like the number. That's a big number in the Bible. 3 is a big number. But Saul goes home and he has to have people take care of him. Well, God has one of the apostles go to Saul and say, "Hey, this is going to be this is what God wants from you. God wants you to preach the word." And he wanted him to change from, being a complete Christian killer to preaching the gospel. And, if God knocks you off of a horse and blinds you and then says, "Hey, I need you to," I'm feeling like that's probably what I'm going to do. And at that point, he probably felt really powerless. If you think about it, when somebody changes everything in your life, the powerlessness, the humility, and being humble is like a big thing. I'm sure he, just trying to think about how he felt at that moment, was probably definitely a lot of powerlessness. We must also, sorry, I need a drink. Okay. We must first accept our powerlessness and inability to manage before we can be freed from addiction and become a channel for God in ways we could never imagine. We are so schooled in the thought that we can do anything we put our minds to that it is almost impossible to envision the power of God in us, doing what we have not been able to do in this point. God in us, shining through human vessels, gives us the ability to recover, to accept powerlessness, and to accept unmanageability. We are then open to a life powered by God rather than by our dependencies, our addictions, or our fallible selves. When God's power lives in us, we can be pressed by troubles, perplexed by life, and haunted by our addictions, dependencies, and at the same time experience peace in trouble, hope in perplexing situations, and a lifting of the compulsions to act out. When we admit our powerlessness, God's power flows in to fill us and accomplish what we could not do on our own. So in an A, it says, um, basically, we are willing, we believe that God can do for us what we could not do for ourselves. Um, so the first question in here, for the step one, it says the no-win situations. What feelings do I experience as I acknowledge people in my life who have power, such as supervisors, spouse, religious leaders, and sponsors? I'll read that question again. What feelings do I experience as I acknowledge people in my life who have power? Um, I will take a couple minutes and come back. I think this is my first time doing this, so I'm learning. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to pause for a second. Okay, and that's the first question. Okay, and that means like maybe the president, I don't know. Maybe the president's a bad idea because we shouldn't really talk about, that kind of stuff. But there. Okay. All right. So I will share my answer on that. Um, I was always pretty defiant, when in my addiction. So, like when it come to people with any kind of authority or, trying to be above me, uh, I I always had to try to manipulate my way to be one up on them, or I just had to push the envelope just to see how far I could get. But I have a cat; he's friendly. Um, but now that I've been through my steps and I've been through my program, I have respect, and I have, like, for my religious leaders and stuff like that. I want to thrive with them. That's how I feel about those people, and I have a lot of love for them and openness, and I speak. I'm willing to speak about my past, so I can move forward in my future, and I do that with in AA. I do that at church and here. So, all right. The next question is, what do I try to escape from, and what do I feel trapped by? All right. So, my answer for that was, I always had, like, I didn't fit in much when I was younger. I was always really shy. and not very well put together. And I was socially awkward. So, you know, alcohol gave me the ability to come out of myself. And I had bad anxiety attacks and stuff like that. So, um, anything that I could uh, feel better about or make myself feel better, I used it in excess. So I tried to escape from mental pain, anxiety, depression, physical pain. Um, and then I felt trapped, really suffocated by anxiety and depression and the things that I fought. But, you know, those, as I have read, are actually, you know, the pastors and stuff like the old school pastors, okay, um, will tell you that demons on the earth, okay, are named anxiety, depression, stress. You know, those are demons. Those are demons in your life, and living right and allowing God to work in your life and prayer. And like I said, just living right helps those problems go away. So, since I have quit using and I've allowed God to work in my life, I've had a lot of, you know, it's not like been overnight. Like, I will have 3 years in August. So, it's taken some time. And, you know, like I said, it's not an overnight thing. It's definitely working progress. It's a program of action, 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 and more action. That's what it says in the big book. Okay, so question 3. Um, how are boredom, fatigue, or loneliness? I'll type it in here. I'm not um, commas. You guys get the point. All right, so my answer for that is I still work on these. Um, I, you know, like I went through a big bout of time in my life where I was petrified to be by myself. It was long, and I now that I live alone, I am, you know, I have time with God. I feel like that barrier, you know, with God was because I was never alone long enough and it was never quiet enough for me to hear him. So, you know, loneliness, I feel like if you're feeling lonely, that is the time to connect with God. That is the time to pray. And, you know, feelings of boredom, pick up your Bible. You know what I mean? Pick up the big book. Get a sponsor if you are recovering from drugs and alcohol. There's meetings online. You know, you can, if you don't have a car, it's .org. You know, you can get on there. 24/7 meetings. You know, the original Zoo Crew, they had 24/7 meetings and they have fellowship in between. Um, so that's you know a um, if you need prayer, City Church for All Nations is the church that I definitely 19 church. It's in Georgia. It's an online church, but he is amazing. He is he don't mess around. He is a very profound preacher, and he gets the point across. He doesn't just tickle your ears and tell you what you need to hear. You know, He talks about sin and the things you're not supposed to be doing, and talks about real life, you know. All right. So, question 4 is, when things do not go my way, or when I am in a no win situation, what is my reaction? Um, so, I'll type that one real quick. When, actually, when things do not go my way, or when I am in a no-win situation, what is my reaction? Okay, example being, with relationships, you know, so I used to be pretty good at like, yeah, I used to be pretty bad. All right. I I didn't have much. I didn't have patience. Uh, I blew my lid a lot, and I used to fight and do stupid things. Driving a car, I if I got behind somebody slow, I was honking my horn. I was always in a hurry. I was always rushing through life. So now, okay, my way of handling things. Um, is when I'm in a no win situation, sometimes I just need a moment. If I know that, if I know I'm not in the wrong, um, but the other person is, it's kind of, it's just one of them things where you got to say, you know what, all right, you know, God bless you, you know, depending on the situation, you know. There's like really no right or wrong answer for this one. It's just you have to present yourself as a person who follows God. It tells you in the Bible, if they hit you on the right cheek, turn, give them the left. So you are supposed to, represent yourself as, being Christ-like. And it's not Christ-like to argue. It's not Christ-like to fight. And I still grapple with that sometimes. Because when you get into situations where you are in a no-win situation, you have anger that floods in, and that is sinful for starters. We are not supposed to let anger is a secondary emotion in the psychology world. They will tell you that anger is something you choose, and that's very factual. And so is jealousy. Jealousy, anger, those are secondary emotions. Those are things you choose to feel. Sadness is not. Sadness does happen whether you want it to or not. Um, but, as far as like, you can control your anger, you may have to go to a couple classes, but I mean, if I can control my anger, after, the life I lived, you can control your anger. I mean? Like, there's hope. Okay. Pray about it, spend some time with God, and go to some meetings, and you'll find people. AA, there's like, if you can't find love and support in AA, I mean, message me and I will send you to a different AA group. Okay. Because they're out there. Trust me. Download the meeting guide. It looks like a chair. And there's the everything AA app. That also is pretty informative. I'm a GSR for my home group, so I find out like all the new stuff. Alcoholics Anonymous, the Everything AA app. So anything that is Alcoholics Anonymous related at all, you will find in the Everything AA app. So I just thought I would throw that out there. Okay. The next question is, if I could change my response, how would I do it? Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that I just went, never mind. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Did I do something wrong there? Okay. All right. So, dangerous self deception. Okay. I don't know if this is still part of step one. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. So, dangerous self deception is, all right. The question for this is, what is the longest time I have been able to stop addictive behaviors or using addictive substances? All right. Okay. So, the longest time I've been able to stop using addictive substances or using addictive behaviors. All right. So, I feel like everybody with this, okay? So, everybody has something that they are we thrive, okay? Naturally when we are born, all right, we are meant to thrive and grow, and we want and we need and we want and we need. So we're always I I feel like there's a very delicate balance between addictive behavior and thriving, okay? Because we are supposed to go above and beyond to live a happy life, and then we go full throttle process. Okay, so I am one of those people. So everything I did was in excess, and I still do. And I shopping, um, relationships, everything I do is in excess. So my addictive behaviors are still in full swing, but I notice them, I recognize them, and um, I have a sponsor who get down, get down. Sorry. I have a sponsor who helps me with that, and she recognizes my behaviors as well. So, and I journal about it. The longest I've been off of any substances, I did have I had a relapse. January 2025, and I had a heart attack and I died for 4 minutes. And before that, I had gotten sober August 23rd of 23. Um, so there's that. But I had not ever tried or even thought about being sober from the time I was 21 until the time I was 42. So, uh, and I went through so many stages. I identify as an alcoholic because I would have never stopped drinking if there wasn't consequences. You know what I mean? There wasn't consequences, and I got tired of not remembering. I actually woke up in jail. I robbed a bank, and I went to prison for a year for that one. So I had to stop drinking, and but I needed something to hold on to. So I started doing pills, And after that, I started getting into some harder drugs. And when somebody tried to kill me in a car accident, and I was homeless in a wheelchair, and um, I had reached my rock bottom, I was hopeless, helpless, and I was broken. So that's and that was in 2023. All right. So, question two, what are some of the reasons I use for starting my behaviors or substance abuse again? Now, I don't really think that's a really good question. Um, because it says, what are some of the reasons I use for starting my behaviors or substances again? So I guess that means like I'm learning this right along with live people. Okay. So I don't even know if anybody's watching this, but if they are, hi. So I feel like that would be like trying to validate relapse, and I just don't feel like that's a really good question. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I am an addict, and that feels like that gives you permission, and we don't need permission, so we're going to skip that question. What are the things I think I can control? How do I lie to myself, and about what? Okay, I guess that's a pretty good question. It sucks, but that's a good question. All right, I'll type that in the chat. What are the things I think I can control? There's one. Okay. And how do I lie to myself, and what about? Okay. All right. So, what things do I think I control? So, my sponsor told me that I'm a control freak. I got OCD, and all right. So, you put a hula hoop around you and you drop it on the floor. That's what you can control. Nothing else. And half the time, I can't even control that. So that is real. That's reality. You cannot control anything. All right. Nobody, nothing. Just you and your emotions. Only expect that. So if anything else happens that you're able to control, be grateful. Okay. How do I lie to myself, and about what? Um, I I don't know. I'm not a saint, but I over the course of time of being sober, I've just really learned to be honest. It takes rigorous honesty. I don't even remember which step it is, but it says in how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed her path. And if they have the capacity to be honest, that is the big thing right there. Is just the honesty and the willingness. That's you know it You can't lie to yourself. We know if we're lying, so why would we lie to ourselves? It is beyond me. We can't, and it's just stupid. So if we're going to lie to ourselves, who else is lying to us? And why? And that makes it so easy for us to believe anybody else that would be lying. If we can deceive us, anybody can. So that's we're disrespecting ourselves, and we're allowing others to do the same. So that's just my opinion. Not a counselor, but I am a vapor, so I'm really sorry about this. Character defect. I'm working on it. Okay. Um, what is so scary about telling the truth? Okay. So it is scientifically proven. All right. Psychologically proven that we have a negative, sinful thought every 30 seconds. So that's the scary part about telling the truth, is that right there. I don't really need to say anything else. Um, Now, but uh, when I first got sober and I did my fourth step, that was really hard because I had lived in the victim mentality for so long that um, that when I finally realized that I wasn't uh, I wasn't the victim, I was really changed by that. You know, when I took my part and I told myself the truth finally, that that changed my entire outlook on life. It really did. So when you start, the scary thing about telling the truth is the truth, it's sometimes just really hard to tell, but once you start getting in the habit of that, um, I mean, it's really, it's something we should just be born with. We should just not have these problems. Like, um, I feel like there's just certain things that we are not being taught nowadays. The kids are being raised different than we were raised. I was raised to tell the truth, but I got into addiction and started lying. I mean, but like the kids now that are my kids' age, um, they're not brought up that way, and I think it's because my generation, a lot of us got into drugs, and we're not there for our kids like we were supposed to. So, and that is that's that's the hard truth right there. So, all right. Next question: as I explore powerlessness, what blind spots have I discovered? Okay, I'm not really sure how to answer that one. Um, as I explore powerlessness, what blind spots have I discovered? I don't know. I guess I don't know how to answer that one. So I guess we're just going to skip on that one because I just really don't know. All right. What are the results of pride in my life? All right. So being prideful, thinking I could do everything on my own, and prideful got me alone. Um, Nobody wants to be around somebody who puts their pride in everything and makes it about me, me, me. So if you feel like your friends are distancing themselves from you, just, do some moral inventory. You know what I mean? Check it out. It's probably because your pride's in there. And, the big thing is in your recovery, you have to know that you are not doing this by yourself. This is God. You know, He's the one who takes away your cravings. He's the one who takes away that, because in addiction, we want it. You know what I mean? We need it. And when that's gone, that's not on us. We didn't do that, because if it was up to us, we'd still be using, drinking, and living life full throttle, you know. But it's like God puts his hand on our head and he's like, you know what? You're done. You know, for me, I had a heart attack and I died. That was enough, that I got blessed. You know what I mean? I know that sounds crazy, but um, having a heart attack was a blessing. That woke me up. I didn't see like no bright light when I died for 4 minutes, but um, when I did come out of that, I really started discovering God, and I realized that, if I died then, um, I would have woke up on the outside of that gate, you know, and I would not be in the book of life because I wasn't saved and I wasn't baptized and I was still living wrong. All right, next, moving forward. All right, so a humble beginning. What is the difference between humiliation and humility in my life? All right, so humiliation and humility. Oh, I can't type, sorry. Difference between. Okay, so, I put it's supposed to be humiliation. Sorry. All right, so humiliation and humility. So, I mean, so for me, I've told my story um, in front of online. I have told my story in front of over 100 people, in person up to about 60. And I don't hold back. I am, and I'm not embarrassed by it because it has made me who I am. I feel like God lets us go, not puts us through, sorry. God lets us do what we need to do and we feel what we need to feel because in the future, there's going to be somebody that we meet that's going to go through that needs our comfort. And like it takes an alcoholic to help an alcoholic. It takes somebody who's been in this situation to help somebody that's been in that situation. So to me, that is humility. Being owning up to that is owning up to your all the stuff that you've done. Like I had in my past, the way I would do things is I would jump from guy to guy to guy, and I would play the victim. I would get mad at this guy, and then I would manipulate him, and then I would go over here and say that he did this and this, and then, you know, owning that is humility, and but humiliation is still being embarrassed by it, you know. So I feel like that is a difference. If you're humiliated by it, then that means you have not accepted it and given it to God. Okay. And humility is where you have owned up to it and you are okay with, you've changed your life. It's in the past. So that's my opinion anyway. Okay. How do I regard myself as being a little more important than other people? Okay. All right. So when it comes to, I don't feel any different than anybody else on Judgment Day. We are all going to be judged equal. You know, he says that each sin is equal. So each person is equal. You know, it doesn't matter what you do in this life. If you are the president or if you are a bum on the street, you are a human being. Your riches, that doesn't make you your person. Okay. Your intelligence, the way you live, how you dress, that you are no and more important than anybody else. And the more I read the Bible, the more I go to church, the more I surround myself with like-minded people, the more I realize that I am not different. I am not special. And I am no better than anybody else. I put my shoes on, my pants on, and my socks on the same way y'all do. Maybe a little different, but it's just the same, you know? Um, so, and if you think that you are more important than other people, um, maybe maybe you need to, get a sponsor and maybe work steps. Definitely the step 4. Be like, you know, get them character defects in order. You know what I mean? All right. So, um, what makes me think I am in control of anything? All right. All right. So, like I said, the only thing I can personally control is whatever's in my apartment, and it's because so yeah, representatives. I don't understand that one either. How I try to. All right. How do I try to control or influence God or his representatives? Um, I don't know if that means like the people at church, but I don't know. I don't try to, like I said, I don't try to control anybody. So I don't know. Maybe not sure. Um, when have I placed expectations on other people or God? I could answer that one. Goodness. All right. So I have always I've always set the bar here. Um, and it led me to a very, uh, what word am I looking for? Um, I was always bummed out. Nothing met my expectations. So my two emotions was always disappointed and angry. So I seethed in those emotions. I just resented. Half the time. Um, so that's why, like when I got sober, a lot changed in me. Like my heart went from a brick to, so like expectations definitely. Don't expect anything and appreciate everything. That's been a very big motto to me. It if if anybody does something for you, it's be grateful. I don't care. Don't act entitled. Entitlement is a horrible way to live. Not too many people want to be around you when you act like that either. Pride and entitlement; those are two bad characteristics. I mean, so there's that. And as far as God goes, um, my expectations on that, the only thing God owes you in life, and it says it in the Bible, is death. That's it. So if God grants you anything, be grateful and thank Him for it. When I died, it came back, blessing. That was grace. That was mercy. I didn't expect that. I don't expect anything from God because He only owes you death because we are born sinners. And for sinners, That's just the way of life. Okay. When I have my attitude shown that I believe I know better. Moment. All right. Why is it difficult for me to follow others' instructions? Well, they ask some weird questions in this book, but okay. Um, why is it difficult for me to follow others' instructions? Um, I don't know. I think we're just naturally born to go against the grain. I don't know. That's just I don't know. I follow instructions now. I didn't used to, because if you told me what to do, I think it's called generalized defiancy disorder. I think that's a real thing. That's a real thing. People have that, and some people just are. If you tell them that it's white, they're going to say it's black. And they are just. I can't say certain things on here, so never mind. But some people are just that way. Um, what kind of people do I hang around with and trust? Okay, so you are a product of the first five people that you talk to, and your five main people. Um, so if you look on my phone, the first five people you're going to see is my sponsor, um, and anybody else is going to be they're all in church or recovery. So those are the kind of people that I hang out with, and I don't hang out with anybody that I cannot trust. It took me a long time to realize that there are people in the world you can trust, because I lived a life of being the person you could not trust. So it put me in a paranoid state for being worried that nobody was trustworthy because I wasn't trustworthy. So that's humility right there. See, um, so that, and then but once I started being honest and open, and I met people at the church, and then I started telling my story at meetings, and then I heard other people's stories, and then I would share, I would call people on the phone list and stuff like that, and I would go to church and have people pray for me and all that, and then you know I got involved in the church and all that. So it is those are the kind of people you want to have in your life. All right. All right. What emotions can I identify when I am at the bottom? All right. So I feel like on this one, what emotions can I identify when I am at the bottom? So I think maybe this is one of them questions where you are having, like we all experience lows, right? And, because we're not saints, we're not born perfect, and we're not always going to be happy, joyous, and free. We say it in AA, when be happy, joyous, and free, but there's never going to be a 20-year stretch of just glorifying happiness. We're going to have down days. And, but how do I identify? Um, I write in a journal, and I have a calendar. All right. And there's like certain days in the month that I have real extreme anxiety, and I write them days down. So I already know like what days I cannot do certain things. I plan on hanging out at home. Uh, and I have days where I know that I'm going to be sad for some reason. Since I've gotten sober, I've noticed patterns in myself. So, um, That's why they say your first year is the you learn to love yourself, and you get to know yourself because we don't know ourselves. We've been putting chemicals in our brain for all of our life. So, any diagnosis that we had before, we don't have the same diagnosis now. Like if somebody said we had ADHD or, bipolar disorder or whatever. I mean, we probably still are bipolar, but, you need a re-diagnosis, because drugs don't, drugs and alcohol, uh, they change your chemistry in your brain. So just, and I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying. Okay. What question was that? Bottom. Okay. What makes, oh no, wrong one. What have I done in the past to deal with pain or sadness? All right, so this was a little rough one. Um, in my past, my mom died when I was 23, and I drank and used drugs on that for about 20 years. Um, every holiday, drank. Every birthday, her birthday, drank. That's how I dealt with any sadness or any pain. Um, but now, I, you know, I have people that I talk to, and I have healthy ways of dealing with it. I have EMDR therapy that helps me, and it works pretty well. I'll type that in the thing too. EMDR. Because I do have PTSD. I've had two people try to kill me in a car accident, so I have a hard time writing with anybody. I can't do it. Um, so, but that helps me with that. Um, all right, next question is like little children. All right, what happened in the past that still provokes fear in me today? Okay, I think we're going to stop here because I've been on here for an hour and 7 minutes. So if I don't know if anybody was watching, but I appreciate it. And step one is, it admitting we're powerless is it, and you know, I know it sucks to have that label, as an alcoholic or an addict or a gambler or addicted to porn, or I have addictions to food. I There's so many things you can be addicted to: negative thinking, anger, um, relationships, codependency. Uh, there, I, Codependency was a big one for me too. That's why I cannot date. I cannot date. A period. I'm not good. I'm toxic, uh, because I just can't. Everything I do is in excess. So I just not that person. Okay, well, if anybody has any questions, just put them in the chat. Thank you, and have a good day. I'll be back on here tomorrow, and we'll do step 2.